Welcome to our VISTA Table Talks mini summer series. I'm Danielle Walker, the Up2Us VISTA Program Manager. In the third part of our mini series, we're joined by Up2Us Summer VISTAs, Grace Thede and Delaney Grant, who are serving at Football for the World Foundation, and Erika Olivera serving here at Up2Us Sports. On this episode, we are revisiting the topic of women and girls in sports. All three women are female college athletes playing soccer at the highest level. They'll dive into their experiences as female athletes, the barriers they faced, and the challenges that are unique to the female athletic experience. I'm going to pass it over to Kayla Smith, an Up2Us Summer Cohort leader who also played soccer growing up, to lead the conversation. Kayla, take it away.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Appreciate that intro. Awesome. Well, thank you, Delaney, Grace, and Erika for joining this talk today. I'm really excited to hear about your experiences and maybe the barriers you faced and continue to face as female athletes. I would love to start with introducing ourselves, sharing our names and what organizations we're serving at this summer. I can go first. My name is Kayla Smith. I'm in AmeriCorps VISTA working with Up2Us Sports as a cohort leader this summer. Delaney, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm Delaney Grant. I'm a summer VISTA at Football for the World in Omaha, Nebraska.
My name is Grace Thede. I am also a summer VISTA through AmeriCorps, with my host site being Football for the World in Omaha, Nebraska.
Hi, I'm Erika Olivera. I'm also a summer VISTA working with AmeriCorps, a cohort leader for this summer, and I am currently in Sacramento, California.
Great, thanks for sharing. We can just jump right on in. Like Danielle said, you all three are female college athletes playing soccer at the highest level. I'd love to hear kind of more about your background in sports, sports growing up. What sports did you play? Maybe what age did you start? Would love to hear more about that.
I can start. So growing up, I played pretty much every sport that was offered to me. I played like t-ball at the start, then softball. I did swimming, basketball, volleyball, and then of course soccer, which is what I play now. But really anything I could get my hands on, I played. And it wasn't until like high school where I decided I kind of needed to pick a sport, and soccer was the sport that I went with. So.
Nice. Yeah, I kind of had a similar experience growing up. I kind of tried out every sport. I played like softball, basketball, tennis, and soccer was the one that always, I had that passion for, and I was able to just be like, hey, you know what? I want to continue to pursue this one. So yeah.
Yeah, that was me too. I'm pretty similar to you guys. I was really active and played almost any sport that I could. I didn't care if I played with the boys at all. It was really fun. So yeah, and then I figured I liked soccer probably around high school age as well.
Yeah, I think exactly the same as you all. Just kind of started playing young, tried to keep up with my older sisters, and then yeah, high school, middle school really zoned in on soccer. I'm curious if there was anything about soccer that like called out to you that made you kind of go in that direction.
For me, in grade school at recess, it was like you would levitate to like a sport, and it was always like boys soccer and then like girls soccer, and me and one of my friends would always like each day go over to the boys soccer and try and like make our way on their field. And I don't know, one day I guess they let us play, and like we hung in there with them, and like I don't know, that's when I kind of found out that I was good and that I could play further. And so I think just like validating myself then was like what made me keep playing.
That's crazy because yeah, growing up, I'm from a really small town, like 6,000 people, and we didn't have any girls programs. Like the closest one was like an hour away. So I played on a boys team actually all the way up until like 8th grade, and then that's why I was like, oh, I should probably start playing with girls now. So I jumped on a club team after that. But yeah, it was honestly just because I always had fun, and it didn't matter like if I was playing with people who were like me or not. I always had like that love for it. So I was like, you know, this is the sport that I want to continue pursuing.
Erica, I'm like kind of similar to you. I have a twin brother, so I am just lucky enough that he wanted to include me in stuff, as he should.
As he should.
Yeah, as he did. And so I got to play with a lot of his friends. So for me, I feel like it was more normal for me to play around boys. But yeah, it definitely was proving yourself all the time as a young girl, which you shouldn't have to, but you did.
Did you notice any differences as you were like playing with boys and then switched to maybe playing more on girls' teams?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big difference just because boys are like a lot faster and more physical. So that was like a bigger difference. But when I started playing with girls, I played with girls that were 2 years older. So you know how we go through puberty a little bit faster than guys. So it was like, I'm playing with these like almost women and I'm over here like still going like through the change. So that I think was the difficult part. But other than that, just learning like the speed of play, I guess, was the biggest difference.
Yeah, mine was boys not wanting to like hit you and thinking that you're gonna get hurt. Like I can definitely hit a boy. Like I had no problem like slide tackling a boy when I was younger. But it was just hard to let them know that they could do that to you and you can be as competitive as they could, if not more.
I totally agree with Grace. Like me and my friend that would go over and play with the boys, we would like slide tackle, and I think the boys are like, what the heck? Like, you guys can do that? And it's like, yeah, we're actually like kind of good. Like, so yeah.
Kind of, yeah. Hearing that feels a bit like frustrating, but and it sounds like maybe it was frustrating at the time of like, yeah, always having to prove yourself. Like just being you wasn't enough. It was like having to prove yourself every time, which I feel like is a theme we're seeing in a lot of women's sports. Thanks. And so yeah, kind of going on like women's sports and how there is quite a bit of a difference between women's and men's sports. There's quite a few barriers that females have to face. A few of these barriers include like a lack of education on the benefits of playing sports, very few opportunities for mentorship for females, lack of funding, some feeling unwelcome in the sports space, and maybe facing stereotypes on what the female athlete should look like. I'm curious, are those barriers that you noticed when you were growing up, and maybe if you're noticing any of those now as well?
Sure. I feel like feeling unwelcome, and you didn't mention this, but I feel like it is included, like just having not that we didn't have role models, but for boys, it's a lot easier to find a male role model or like one that you focus on. And I feel like for us, we had a few like crazy good female players. But I mean, even at that age, it's just really hard to feel welcome just because like we kind of have a little bit of a toxic culture when we're younger. We don't mean to, but I mean, it's just assumed that boys are better than girls when you're younger, which is not true. But that's how it is. And that's something that I feel like we've all had to navigate. And also just showing that our female role models are just as successful as a boy's female role models.
If not more successful.
The boys' male role models, sorry. I misspoke.
Yeah, and going off of that too, I think like you mentioned, like the statistic, like 14 to 8% of girls start to like drop off in sports, and I think it's because of that, like lack of having that welcome environment and it being more like, oh, you're a boy, you need to be athletic, and like you're a girl, you need to be like this girly girl that like doesn't do all these weightlifting and all these things that make you an elite athlete. And I think that's something that we need to change the outlook on because, it's hard because as female soccer players, we do have a lot of like ACL injuries and stuff because we don't do those things that help us get stronger because it's seen as more of like a masculine thing when in reality, it's like something that's just going to help you out in the long run.
And going off of that, like, I feel like there's a lack of community surrounding women's sports. Like I know at my school, there's definitely a lot more community support around like football and like wrestling and basketball than there is around like women's soccer. So like my team doesn't even have a field that's like on campus because we don't have the funding for it, since there isn't community around it, as much community around it. So yeah, that's a little bit frustrating sometimes, but yeah.
Definitely. That's so frustrating. And that actually just reminded me, like, yeah, it's just different opportunities, but unfair opportunities in the sense of, like, I remember our male soccer players would play Tuesday, Thursdays, and then the females would play Wednesday, Fridays, but the football team also played Friday nights. So, like, no one would go to the female game, you know, but they purposefully made the male games Tuesday, Thursday. So I think it's like, it's so difficult. It's almost being set up for not being successful, which is frustrating.
Yeah, and another thing is like, I feel like when I'm asked like, what are you gonna do after college, or what are you gonna do like when soccer is over, I never think like, oh, I'm gonna go pro, because there's not much opportunity there for me because women are significantly underpaid. But I feel like it's different if you were to ask like a male soccer player. Like a lot of times I feel like their answer is, yeah, I want to go pro, because there are those opportunities for them. So that's another thing that's a little bit frustrating. It's just like the lack of opportunity.
Do you all feel that way too as well? Like, was that like a thought in your mind of, I feel like it is, but of like going pro, but then maybe not being able to afford it or things like that?
Completely. Like, maybe I'm not even good enough to go pro. I can deal with that, but I haven't even ever explored that like side of myself or that avenue because like I knew I may have to work a second job or just something like that, where I would love to do something like that, but I feel like whether people in my life have meant to or not, I have been steered away from that, and I probably wish I hadn't, but I just think it's a lot of different things coming together, like just continuously telling us the message that like we're not good enough. And we see that like real time with us like not being paid the same um, as men. And like the women's national team is a perfect example of that. They're still fighting that. It's 2021 and we're still fighting that. So that's really frustrating to just live through.
Yeah, and I think like the more discouraging thing as well is like they are the best players basically in the world, and they're not even getting like what a fraction of what the men's team are. And I think that's the thing that is hard as well, because you know we are college athletes, so we have to do both, and it's hard to choose because you want to fully invest yourself in one, but you know you have to have a backup plan because you know you won't make a living in the United States if you're just playing. Yeah.
It made me think, Erica, what you just said, but I think I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so frustrating. I'm curious if any of these, like, I know we talked about it growing up. I guess looking at it as like sorry, I'm losing my train of thought.
Totally okay.
Oh, I'm curious, like now that you're an older athlete, kind of looking, Grace and Delaney, as you're working at Football for the World, like looking at the young girls that are going through your camps, do you see these like barriers, like maybe transportation or lack of mentors? Like you as coaches, I'm sure is so helpful, but are there any other barriers that you're seeing that are affecting them?
Yes, and it's very frustrating, but it's also eye-opening, and I'm very humbled that we get this job because I feel like me and Delaney both get to know how privileged we were growing up, and that while we had like the most typical American like experience with sports, it was also a really privileged one. So I feel like a lot of the kids we see can't even come to a lot of the camps we do or anything soccer related because their parents are working a 9 to 5 job, if longer, and they can't drive themselves. They're 9 or 10 and they just have no form of transportation. So that is one thing that I know we try to offer as much as we can, as long as not as long, like with free gear as well, like cleats and just other things that you might overlook that you would think kids would have that they don't always have access to.
Yeah, I agree. Transportation was definitely one I heard a lot about. just because I was like community outreach, so contacting parents and telling them times of programming and camps. And a lot of times my response is there transportation provided? Because like Grace said, their parents are working long hours and like the kids can't drive. So that was definitely a big barrier. I was gonna say another one, but now I can't think of it. Oh, definitely like the shoes that we provided. Me and Grace worked at one of our program sites, and there was a kid who was super good and just did not have the proper like shoes to wear. And so that was definitely really eye-opening. Like these kids are really talented and really good, but they are not as privileged as maybe me and Grace were growing up. So definitely very eye-opening.
Yeah, also you asked them, like for us, playing club was pretty easy choice, I would say. But for them, you ask, why do you play, like why aren't you playing club? They have so many barriers in their life that it's just like there's no way they could do it. Like they don't, it's just very frustrating when they're so talented and then they don't have the resources to do it and you just want to give it to them because they just have the talent.
Yeah, definitely. But you all are doing such amazing work out there and offering resources, and then also your expertise and support to them is, I bet, so helpful. Is there anything like when you think on the camps, like your favorite part, maybe things that you do to kind of support those girls coming up in sport, whether that be being a role model or just that verbal support, things like that?
I think being a female athlete and getting the chance to coach a lot of these kids shows them that there can be successful female athletes in sports. And I feel like we saw that a lot of our first days with the kids. A lot of the girls were shocked that we were female athletes in college. So it was super cool to show them. And a lot of the boys, like, it doesn't stop that we have to prove ourselves at a certain age. I still have to prove myself to like 10-year-old boys that I'm good because they're not going to respect me unless I do. So it's just really fun to show girls that we can do it and that we can cross up a boy, even though we're in college. And just showing them that they are as talented as the boys and showing the boys kind of a more positive outlook sometimes on girls in sports.
I think there have been times where we've gone to programming and there have been a couple girls sitting out. And so that's when Grace and I are like, okay, we should play here. And like once we start to play, you kind of start to see the girls like levitate towards the game. Like they're like, oh, they're playing. So like it's okay if we play now, which is super cool. And then we have this book. It's full of like women in sports. And so a lot of times when like the kids are getting water or just like taking a break, we'll read through those and you can tell that that really impacts them too. Like being able to see like all these successful women in the Olympics, like I think Sydney Leroux was one of them. We have a bunch of them, but it's just like the girls seeing like, oh, these women are successful in the sport. Like I think that is definitely beneficial for them for sure.
Yeah, and showing them women of color as well, just because those aren't always highlighted in the media. And a lot of like the population we work with, like demographically, is like a lot of African American kids. And so it's really important to show them that there are definitely strong, like Black athletes that are amazing and talented. And so we definitely try to highlight that and show them in the little like book, the vignettes.
That's huge, having representation, especially like me. My parents are from Mexico, so being a Mexican American, it's always hard not having like any representation on like the U.S. national team or anything, and just like being able to like be a female athlete and then also a female athlete of color, I think is huge when working with populations like that, because it's like they see someone who looks like them that's also doing that. So it's huge that you guys are bringing that up to them too, because that's like really key to, being able to go on and live their dreams. So that's awesome that you guys are doing that.
I'm curious, as we're like talking about role models, and I think a lot of us really idolized the women's national team growing up. I'm curious, maybe also in like your own little circle, did you have maybe coaches or older sisters or something that you really looked up to that helped you kind of navigate these barriers in the sport of soccer as a female?
I had a coach. For me, my coaches that were female were like super awesome because they know what it's like to be a female athlete. And so I had one like when I first started the sport who was like so awesome, and I wasn't even that good at soccer when I started, and she was like straight up with me. She's like, yeah, I mean, like, you're not that good. But like she saw potential, and like just her like seeing potential and like being willing to like work with me and like show me that like if I work at it I would like get there someday, like because my goal was to like make varsity in high school, and then like once I got to high school it's like, okay, I want to play like college soccer, and then I'm like, okay, I want to play D1 college soccer. Like I think just having that first person like believe in me was like crucial to like my development in the long run.
My high school coaches definitely changed the game for me. I think we had, I want to say that we had like the only all-female coaching staff in Nebraska for high schools. So that's not really something you'd think like you'd really think anything of. But for me, I came out a completely different person. I didn't know if I wanted to play college soccer just because I wasn't that dedicated and I just didn't know if I wanted to do it. But they were just so great about just telling us like our self-worth and saying, you guys are all good enough to play. Like, I feel like that's something a lot of us aren't told, or we just, I don't know. I think we're just steered away from like playing sports a lot or playing professional sports. And so being told by like someone older than me who has played and understands and just telling us that we can be successful was really big for me. And they were also big on just sitting us down and just talking to us about life, saying, you know, this goes beyond soccer, and just being really supportive. And I feel like having a supportive coaching staff that was all female for me made me in a really comfortable environment where I could, you know, be myself and tell them anything. So for me, that really, really helped me.
Yeah, I think for me, honestly, it was kind of my brother that really like helped me flip the switch because, like I said, growing up, I played on a boys team, and then jumping on to high school, and then just jumping from club to club because I never really had like a stable club team either. He was just always the one that told me, you know, like if you want it, you're the one that's gonna have to go get it. Like you're gonna have people that support you, but ultimately it's going to be you the one that's putting in the work and doing that. So you know, after I learned that lesson, I was kind of like, shit, like I can't just wish for it to happen, you know, I gotta go make it happen. So that's really what pushed me to, you know, make the move to play college soccer.
I think that's such a great point, Erica, that you brought up, of like your brother and like a male role model that is supportive of women going after their dreams and going after sports. Because as much as females are supporting females, I think it has to be everyone, you know, male and female supporting each other, and yeah, to get the best out of each other. So I think that's a great point. Okay, I'm also curious. The thinking of soccer and the amazing benefits of the skills you learn, both life and for the sport, things like that. I'm curious if you all want to share kind of your big takeaways from playing sports, growing up and now. Like, why is it so beneficial?
It definitely was something that kept me active, um, and like taught me time management because like growing up, I guess for club, I would go to school and then I'd come home and then I'd have practice. So even just managing that time and figuring out, okay, how am I gonna get from here to practice and then back from practice home? And then now, like in college, it's figuring out, okay, how am I gonna go from class to practice and then like from practice to lift? And so definitely I would say time management. And also like 99% of the friends I've made have been through the sport, and those are the people who have like been the most supportive of me in like every aspect of my life. So for me, like the friendships, the time management skills, and like the health benefits are what were good for me.
Yeah, I echo a lot of those definitely. I feel like mine was definitely finding my self-worth, just because there are always going to be people down the road that are going to tell you you aren't good enough and that you can't play that position or you're never going to be able to do that in college. Um, and just going through adversity too, like personal injuries as well. And just knowing that at the end of the day, like you have to have your own back and you have to support yourself. But you're never going to do that if we're not in a supportive environment. And I feel like that's really important to note. You can have everything, but if you don't have the support of people around you, whether that be your family or friends or anyone in your community, it's going to be a very lonely road. So I'm lucky enough that I have had that, and it's made me realize that I am a strong female athlete and I can do things. And then just a little things like time management as well. I have loved that part of it, and yeah, friends too.
You two both made really good points. I mean, you guys basically hit everything, but it's just like, yeah, like don't be late to anything. That's the one thing that it's just like, I need to be there at least 15 minutes earlier, else I'm not on time. So all of that, what you guys, said is really helpful for us. And also, just like being able to push through things. Cause like, before I went to college, I was like, how the heck am I going to run a 6-minute mile? Like you're telling me like what, like that's never possible for me, but actually pushing through and making that happen and seeing that I can, like those limits that I put on myself, I was like, why did I do that? Because I know that I could continue to push through and do more. So I think that was huge for me as well.
Yeah, and I would echo everything you all said with the community aspect of it, feeling like I can do anything, being more confident in my body, like all those things. So it's so beneficial, and it's a little heartbreaking that so many girls are dropping out so young. So I'm really appreciative of you all being such amazing role models, and also Delaney and Grace working at Football for the World and really making a difference in these young girls' lives. You guys are doing awesome work. So as we close out today, I would love to, if you all would like to share maybe a piece of advice or encouraging words for young girls playing sports nowadays, to keep going, to keep playing. Do you all have any advice or encouraging words?
Yeah, I would just say keep going if you like it, even if other people are telling you you're not good enough or you can't play with them because you're a girl. I would just say prove them wrong.
Yeah, I think what I would want to say is like, no matter what your situation is, financially, if you can't be on the best club team there and you just still have that loving passion for the sport, like you just keep working hard. Don't let that dream die because of those barriers. Like at some point someday, like someone's gonna see you and see how hard you're working, and they're gonna step in and help you because that's what people, like good people, do. And being in that situation growing up, I actually played club on a scholarship, and like that's how I did it. I did it by just continuing following my passion, and someday someone said, hey, I'll help you out because I see like you're working hard. So just continue to give it your all.
Yeah, mine is similar to yours. Just working hard and knowing that you definitely have it in you to keep going. Like doing fitness is not fun, and overcoming like an ACL tear is not fun. But those are things that we can all do, and we're gonna look back and think of how fast it went, or how easy it was, or how it wasn't as hard as we thought. And for me, that definitely is what I have gotten out of this, is that however strong I think I am, I'm like 10 times stronger than that. And so it is a mental game, but it's important to just know that you are strong and you got it.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing your experiences and also, yeah, your encouraging words and advice. I personally find it so inspiring. You are all strong women, and it's awesome to hear where you're coming from and where you're at. So keep it up. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for listening in today. Tune in next time to hear more from our Up2Us Vistas.